were the first country to think of preserving these public lands for the use of many generations to come.
Of course, it's been great for our economy. It's been great for our resources. The state of Wyoming is blessed with great natural resources, and that's built our schools and provided human services and wonderful jobs for our people. Grasslands, timber, some of the finest mountain recreation anywhere in the world.
Living out here among these great natural resources and amidst this natural beauty makes you realize the importance of many uses that we have here for the land. Everything from tourism to forest management and timber to fisheries to range management and supporting agriculture.
The house that I bought was bordering the wilderness area, and I could walk out the back property line of my house up and walk 362 miles before I hit a road. Now, I haven't done it yet, but just to know that I could go that far on public lands and to have that adventure, to have that serenity, to have that escape was a big draw for me, and the gift of those public lands allowed that.
Well, I think we've been blessed in this country. If you look at the last many decades, we've had a growing economy, we've had a growing population, and yet we've been wise as a country to set aside literally millions of acres of lands to be used for national parks, for forest units, for rangelands managed by the BLM, and of course for Fish and Wildlife refuges managed by the Fish and Wildlife Service.
One of the big challenges that we're facing, and we had one of the highest fire seasons since 1988 we had this year, and we had the largest fire ever up in Grand Teton National Park this summer. And so the management of these forests and also creating defensible space, not only for our structures but for our communities. You look at the Forest Service and their expenditure of 60 or 70% of their budget now is for fire suppression. Is one. The other one that keeps coming up is access to these wonders that we have in our public lands.
So I think in the country there continues to be a rub between federal lands, public lands, and the needs of the private sector, the needs of counties, the needs of the state. But with that comes a rub: local interests versus federal interests, national groups versus local groups, and the adjudicated water in the states is under the control of the states, and so how that water is managed on the federal lands and how it's utilized.
I think the U.S. economy will continue to grow and our population will continue to grow. What's required is creativity to achieve the balance, to achieve that multiple resource use, the greatest good for the greatest number of people, as Gifford Pinchot said.
I've always been comfortable being a Republican, and fits very well with the opportunities I've had in public service to be in conservation and environmental protection. So my feeling is conservation has always been a conservative philosophy.
You look at a community like Jackson Hole, a big part of our community are people that are fishing guides or hoteliers, and there's a tremendous number of people who are avid fly fishermen in this country, and by the way, they're some of the greatest conservationists out there. Same with hunters. And it's the people who use these lands for recreational purposes that are the greatest advocates for protecting the habitat.
And it's the lessons that have been we can take away from the ranchers and the ranching community as to what good stewards they are with their lands. And so how do we carry that in terms of approach, being good conservationists, being good stewards to the management of our public lands? One of the things going forward, and John touched on this a little bit, but having a science base and local solutions.
I think if you think of many of the great accomplishments in American history, they've been bipartisan in nature. And I think environmental protection needs to be that way. The problems that we talk about when we think about environmental protection, whether it's climate change or public land, certainly climate change, they're hundreds of years in the making, and they're going to be many decades, if not hundreds of years in the solving. And that's going to require a sustained cooperative approach and not a time where one party tries to use it as a weapon against the other party. One of the things that people of both parties need to reflect and think about is how can we come together on some of these issues and realize we're going to disagree on 10 or 20% of the issues, but is there a core group of 75 or 80% of the issues that people can work in a bipartisan way to solve? I think if we really think about environmental accomplishments that are going to last for decades or for centuries, they have to be the product of bipartisan consensus.
I'm hoping we can use this timing during this clamor of giving public lands back to the states versus no, you can't touch them, but belong to the American public, to look at ways to demonstrate some models where the states and local people have a larger management role in these lands. I think there's real opportunities for the commercial sector, universities, governors, county commissioners to come together, logging people, and look at a way where they can work as true partners.
This should be the common ground, literally, in terms of metaphor and public lands.